Hey guys, so I'm just doing a really quick little video just to talk about something I was talking to my wife earlier, which is kind of funny because we were talking about the benefits of learning music. And I said, well, one of the benefits of learning music is that children, especially children, get better at math. And she didn't really quite understand this concept. And so I explained it to her. Going through some music terminology and stuff like that and having to explain some other things. And she goes, "Oh, I see how that works." I was like, "Well, that's very interesting." So I want to explain this to you guys so you guys understand this as well. So music kind of takes elements from so many different areas and it's its own thing. Obviously, it's its own genre, but it takes ideas from different things. Like in math, for example, if we're playing in 4/4 time, right? That means we can fit four quarter notes into one measure, one four count, right? But then we can break this down to other things. So we can put a whole note, but we can only put one whole note in that measure. So that's it. That's all you got room for. We could do two half notes. Now you can do a dotted half note and then add a quarter note. And that would be another one. So you see immediately what we're doing is we're looking at this unit of four into how could we break this down into different sections and different types of rhythms. So and just so you know, like the dotted half note, basically you take the half note symbol, you put a dot next to it, and then what happens is that dot adds half of the duration of that note that came right before the dot. That's what a dot does to these things. So like a dotted, so a whole note is four counts, right? So if you make a dotted whole note, it now goes to six counts. So it wouldn't necessarily work in say a four in the time of 4/4 because it would have to go outside of that measure, which is fine. You can do that. But I'm saying just for the idea of fitting everything into that one measure, it wouldn't fit into that one measure. It would continue into the next four count. So it would go 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, and then it would stop. So that's what the dots do. They just add half of that, what that is, whatever that note is, or whatever the duration of that note is, it adds half of that. So if we're doing a quarter note is just one count, right? So when we're counting in 4/4, we're counting quarter notes. 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4. So if we were to split that in half, we have an eighth note. And then from that eighth note, we can actually fit 8 of those into that four count. 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and. So if we were to take a quarter note and put a dot next to it, right, then what we have is a quarter note plus an eighth note. So now we're getting into some intricate math here. So I don't want to leave anyone with a headache or anything like that. We don't have to really get into playing all that. This is more of just a discussion about it. But this is something that a lot of people don't realize when their child is learning music or someone's learning music, that their math skills will actually improve from understanding these kinds of concepts about rhythm. It's kind of interesting, actually. Also, another thing is just looking at, if we're looking at a scale and we're looking at positions of scales or where different notes are in relationship to each other, that's another thing that can get, when we're looking at patterns and stuff like that, that's also a mathematical thing. Another thing about math is figuring out patterns. Right? If anyone's ever read like Einstein's riddle or tried to figure it out, you're looking for what you're trying to do is look for what doesn't make sense so that you can find what does make sense. So if you don't know Einstein's riddle, just go on Google, look it up, and try to figure it out. All right, it's a lot of fun. Supposedly, only a small percentage of the people in the world can solve it. I taught this actually to a bunch of, I guess, like sixth graders, and they figured it out. It took a while. It wasn't like bang, bang, boom, they got it. But, we sat down and we worked it out together as a group, and they actually solved it. So if I can get a group of 12-year-olds to figure it out, I'm sure if you spend some time on it, you can work it out as well. It's it does take some thought behind it. It's not like you sit down and go, yeah. So instead of doing a crossword puzzle or doing those Sudoku, whatever they are, try figuring that one out. That'll be fun. But math does have in it, like, creative problem solving. And that's what happens when you're working out scales and looking at how they can relate to each other, the different notes and the different patterns. And even on different instruments, you're looking at, like, oh, how does this pattern work here? Or how could I do this over here? And then you start to look for how these, especially on instruments like flutes and stuff like that, where the patterns aren't so, like on a piano, the pattern is right there in front of your face. There's no way around it. And then you get into other instruments where it's not laid out like that, like on a flute or an oboe or a clarinet. They kind of move around a little bit, and so it gets shifted around. Or like a trombone, that's a really good one to use because I can't play trombone, okay? And the guys who can play trombone, I got to give them that, because just trying to find the notes on the slide thing, that takes some patience to really work that out. I'm sure, like, once you start to work that out, it gets really simple. Just like anything else, like I've played like fretless basses and stuff like that before, which at first was a little weird, but then I got used to it, and it became pretty simple. You kind of just know where things are. Same thing on a violin. Like I'm not much of a violin player, but I just kind of find it on there. It's still a little weird for me. I'm not totally used to it because I do play mandolin, so it's an easy switch from the mandolin to the violin, but it's still a little weird, especially using a bow. I'm not 100% used to it yet. But, all these problem-solving tools that you get from playing music and learning patterns equates to when you're looking at math and trying to figure out math problems. They really make a big difference, because it's like music is like opening up the door to solving all these problems or all these questions, right? And it helps you figure out patterns. So when you go into math and start doing math problems, you start looking for patterns. As a musician or someone who understands music, it makes it really easy to start finding patterns or looking at what doesn't work. And that's a big part of problem solving that I think people don't realize when doing math, is the problem solving part is looking for things that don't fit. Like, this doesn't make sense. So if that doesn't make sense, then it has to be this. And that's a big part of those creative problem solvings, like those word problems and stuff like that. So that's just a little bit about why learning music really makes a difference when it comes to understanding other subjects, especially math, is because of all the problem solving or trying to figure out rhythms and put those together. So all that stuff comes together later on in other subjects. Math is definitely one of them. Math is probably one of the biggest ones. But interesting enough, I'm going to do another video talking about like what music does. This is a really cool study that I just found out about, and I'm going to read more about it, and then I'm going to do a video on it. But there was a study where people were looking at brain activity doing different things, and then they found that music actually does something different with the brain that nothing else in the world does, just listening to it. And then they found when musicians are playing music, it enhances that same thing. So I'll go more into that in another one, but just for now, just to put it out there, that's how this works with the music and the math. And of course, I'm sure there's more to it. I might have left some things out, but feel free to comment about that. If you say, oh yeah, it also helps with this or it helps with that, that's great. I'd love to hear your comments about it. Thanks a lot.